Hello again, my beautiful anomalies. My name is Estrella, and I'm back with more vampire comparisons and contrasts. Today we are going to talk about Lestat de Lioncourt and compare him with the lore surrounding ancient Indian vampires. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. But before we go, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit that noti bell. Night falls differently depending on where you stand. In the salons and shadow streets of 18th century France, night belongs to figures like Lestat de Lioncourt, elegant, restless, and painfully self aware. In the cremation grounds and ancient forests of South Asian lore, night belongs to something far older and less forgiving. Spirits that do not remember being human in any comforting sense, if they were human at all. To place these worlds side by side is to watch two very different imaginations at work, each asking what it means to exist beyond death. Lestat's story begins, as many modern vampire stories do, with transformation. He's not born a monster, but made into one, drawn across a threshold he never fully understands. Yet, even as his body changes, his mind remains tethered to the life he once lived. He remembers hunger in both his human and inhuman forms. He remembers love, ambition, resentment. Immortality does not erase these things, it magnifies them. Time stretches his emotions into something operatic, and these centuries become a stage in which he performs his identity again and again. To encounter Lestat is to encounter a being who cannot stop asking what he is. The beings of ancient Indian lore do not ask this question in the same way. A Vitala slipping into a corpse, a Rakshaka moving through the world in shifting forms, or a Pishacha haunting the edge of firelight ritual spaces. These figures do not linger over lost humanity. They are not defined by longing for what they were. Instead, they feel as though they have emerged from the cracks in the world itself, shaped by forces that are moral as much as supernatural. Their existence suggests that something has gone wrong. A death improperly handled, a life misaligned with cosmic law, a boundary crossed without the proper rites. They are not individuals struggling with identity. They are signs that the order of things have been disturbed. Because of this, their encounters with humans unfold differently. Lestat draws close. He speaks, seduces, confesses. He seeks connection even when it destroys him. Humans are mirrors in which he tries to recognize himself, even as he becomes increasingly alien. The tragedy of his existence lies in this tension. He is both near to humanity and forever separated from it. The beings of Indian lore keep a different kind of distance. When they engage in with humans, as it is often as a test or a threat or a disruption, a Vitala may speak in riddles, forcing a king to confront moral dilemmas. A Rakshaka may deceive, manipulate, or devour. A Pishacha lingers where the boundaries between purity and impurity blur. These encounters are not about mutual recognition, they are about exposure. The human who meets such a being is not invited into intimacy, but pushed to confront fear, duty, or the consequences of past actions. Even their powers reflect these differing narrative worlds. Lestat's abilities feel almost refined, an extension of his heightened senses and intensified being. Strength, speed, immortality, the taking of blood, these form a recognizable pattern, one that has been shaped and reshaped by centuries of Western storytelling. There is a strange beauty to it, a consistency that allows the reader to settle into the rules of his existence. In contrast, the powers of Indian vampire like beings resist that kind of neat categorization. They possess bodies, distort reality, consume not just blood but flesh, energy, or presence itself. Their abilities feel less like a system and more like an intrusion, something that breaks the expected order of the world. To encounter them is to step into uncertainty, where the rules are not meant to comfort, but to unsettle. Beneath these differences lies a deeper divergence of how each tradition understands morality. Lestat's world is one of interior struggle. Good and evil are not fixed points, but shifting questions, debating within the self. His immortality becomes a lens through which examines loneliness, guilt, desire, and the search for meaning in a life that no longer has natural limits. The world that produces Vitalas, Rakshas, and Pishkas is structured differently. Here, morality is woven into the fabric of existence itself. Actions carry consequences that extend beyond a single lifetime. Rituals matter. Death is not merely an end, but a transition that must be handled correctly. When these processes fail, something returns, but not as a conflicted individual seeking purpose. Instead, it returns as a reminder that the balance has been broken. And so the night divides along these lines. In one vision, it is filled with a figure like Lestat, luminous, articulate, and haunted by his own continuity. In the other, it is populated by presences that feel older than memory, shaped by laws that do not bend to personal desire. Both are terrifying in their own way, but their terror comes from different places. One asks what happens when a person cannot escape themselves, the other asks what happens when the structure of the world itself begins to fray. To move between these visions is not just to compare different kinds of monsters, it is to see how cultures imagine the limits of life, the meaning of death, and the forces that wait in the dark when those boundaries are crossed. I can bet you're wondering what the differences are between the different cultures of vampires and the lore that surrounds them. And let's take a deep dive into that topic. Across cultures, stories of beings that feed on life, haunt the night, and disrupt the boundary between the living and the dead have persisted for centuries. In ancient India, however, such beings do not belong to a single unified category equivalent to the Western vampire. Instead, they emerge from a rich, varied mythological tradition that includes entities such as Vitalas, Rakshas, and Pishkas. While these beings share certain traits that invite comparisons to vampires, such as their association with death, darkness, and predation, their origins, behaviors, and symbolic meanings are deeply rooted in religious and cosmological frameworks that set them apart. Examining these figures reveals a complex system in which the supernatural is closely tied to morality, ritual, and the maintenance of cosmic order. Among these beings, the Vatala occupies a particularly distinctive role. Unlike many Western depictions of vampires, the Vatala does not possess a body of its own, but instead inhabits corpses. It is best known through collections of stories in which engages in dialogue with a human protagonist, often posing riddles or moral dilemmas. In these tales, the Vatala is not merely a predator, but an intellectual and trickster figure. Its power lies in its ability to animate the dead and to challenge the living through knowledge and paradox. This combination of animation and cognition suggests that the Vatala represents a form of consciousness that has not been properly relayed to rest. Its presence applies a disruption in the natural transition from life to death, leaving behind a being that exists uneasily between the worlds. As such, the Vatala is less monster driven by hunger and more a symbol of unresolved existence. In contrast, the Raksha represents a far more physically and cosmically powerful type of being. Frequently appearing in major Indian epics, Rakshas are often depicted as shape shifting entities capable of assuming human or monstrous forms at will. They possess immense strength and are frequently associated with deception, illusion, and the consumption of human flesh. Unlike Vitalas, Rakshas are not typically tied to improper death or lingering spirits. Instead, they are often portrayed as a distinct class or race of beings with their own societies, hierarchies, and motivations. Some Rakshas are purely antagonistic, embodying chaos and opposition to moral order, while others are more complex, demonstrating intelligence, devotion, or even virtue under certain circumstances. This variability reflects their broader symbolic role. Rakshas are embodiments of unrestrained desire, power, and the capacity for illusion. Their ability to disguise themselves underscores a central theme in Indian thought: the danger of mistaking appearance for reality. Pachachas, by comparison, represent perhaps the most grotesque and unsettling of these entities. They are commonly described as malevolent spirits associated with decay, darkness, and impurity, dwelling in cremation grounds, abandoned places, and sites of death. Pachachas are often depicted as feeding on corpses or even the life force of the living. Their presence is frequently linked to disease, madness, or possession, suggesting a deep connection between physical corruption and spiritual disorder. In some traditions, pachachas are believed to arise from individuals who lived immoral lives or died under improper conditions, reinforcing the idea that ethical and ritual failures can have lasting consequences beyond death. Unlike the Vitala, which engages the intellect, or the Raksha, which challenges through power and deception, the Pishacha confronts the living with raw reality of decay and degradation. Despite their differences, these three types of beings share important commonalities that align them loosely with the concept of the vampire. All are associated with the night, with death, or the dead, and with consumption of life in some form, whether through flesh, energy, or possession. Yet the similarities remain largely superficial. The deeper significance of these beings lie in their relationship to the cosmological and moral system from which they emerge. In traditions influenced by Hindu thought, death is not an endpoint, but a transition governed by karma and ritual practice. Proper funerary rites and ethical living ensure a smooth passage into the next stage of existence. When these processes are disrupted, however, the result is not a romanticized immoral, but a being that reflects imbalance, disorder, or corruption. Thus, Vitalas, Rakshas, and Pishachas can be understood not by simply as monsters, but as expressions of different kinds of disruption. The Vitala represents unresolved consciousness lingering between life and death. The Raksha embodies the dangers of unchecked power and illusion, and the Pishacha reflects the consequences of moral and physical decay. Together, they form a spectrum of supernatural figures that illuminate cultural anxieties surrounding death, immortality, and the boundary of human condition. Ancient Indian vampire like beings offer a striking contrast to the more unified and humanized vampire figures found in Western traditions. Rather than centering on individual transformation and personal struggle, these entities are embedded with a broader system of cosmic order and moral consequences. Their stories serve not only to frighten, but also to instruct, reminding the living of the importance of balance, duty, and the proper handling of death. Through them, the supernatural becomes a reflection of the world's deeper structure, where even in death, the consequences of life continue to unfold. That was quite the interesting read there, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you to like, share, subscribe, and hit that noti bell so you don't miss a video from us. And as always, stay safe, polite, and courteous out there. And remember, stay anomalous.